All right, let's jump into a deep dive that gets right to the core of how we all think and talk about what we believe.
Sounds good.
And, for those who are already familiar with street epistemology,
Right.
you already know it's a lot more than just questioning beliefs. It's about this specific kind of dialogue.
Yeah.
One that's based on curiosity, not like a confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
But the million-dollar question here, at least for this deep dive,
Okay.
is, does street epistemology need like a whole name change to reach its full potential?
Oh, interesting.
So today we're going to unpack all these arguments going around about this potential rebrand
Okay.
to navigating beliefs.
Interesting.
So what do you think?
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? How a name can be so central to how people perceive a method.
Right.
I mean, the term street epistemology, it's accurate,
Sure.
but it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, does it?
It does sound a bit like a college course maybe you accidentally wandered into,
Yeah.
and then you spend the rest of the semester quietly trying to drop it. But could just changing the name really make a difference?
That's a good question.
Some folks argue navigating beliefs is like a little bit more inviting, less academic,
Right.
and it kind of hints at the collaborative part of it all.
Yeah, I could see that.
What do you think about that?
I think there's definitely something to be said for a name that's both clear
Yeah,
and intriguing at the same time.
right.
Navigating beliefs, it gives you a sense of exploration, right? It suggests this journey toward understanding.
Yeah.
And it really broadens the appeal
Mhm.
beyond those who are already comfortable with the term epistemology.
Because let's be honest, most people
Yeah.
outside of philosophy circles are not just dropping epistemology in casual conversation.
Right, exactly.
But switching gears for a second, I do see some potential downsides to this.
Okay.
Think about all the resources, the websites, the communities that are already built around street epistemology.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like changing the name now is just like wiping the slate clean.
Yeah.
And I feel like that would rub some longtime practitioners the wrong way.
Alienate them, yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a definite risk there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Disrupting a sense of shared history, a sense of community,
Right.
a rebrand, even if it's for the right reasons, could make people feel like they've lost their identity.
Totally.
And practically speaking, updating all of those materials is a huge amount of work.
It's a massive undertaking.
Not to mention the SEO hit if it's not done carefully.
Right. Exactly.
So there are definitely challenges there.
Yeah, it's almost like trying to rename Google.
Right.
Sure, maybe you've got a good reason for it, but the disruption would be enormous.
Totally.
But let's not forget the whole rebranding debate is fueled by this sense that street epistemology, as it is carrying some baggage.
Yeah.
Specifically, there's this historical link to Peter Boghossian.
Ah, right. The manual for creating atheists.
Exactly.
Yeah. While street epistemology has definitely evolved a lot since then, that association is still there.
It lingers.
Yeah. And that gives people a perception of bias, of having an agenda.
Right. And then there's that word street.
Uh-huh.
It just evokes a feeling of confrontation. Like you're cornering someone on the sidewalk and challenging what they believe.
It's not exactly the most welcoming image.
Not really.
No.
And while challenging beliefs is definitely a part of it, the focus should always be on this respectful dialogue
Absolutely.
and understanding, how someone actually came to their conclusions.
Exactly.
And this is where I think navigating beliefs has some real appeal.
Okay.
It's like this journey of discovery, a collaborative process where you're working together to really understand the landscape of someone's beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot less like you're having a debate and more like you're exploring together.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and beliefs is a much broader term than, say, religious convictions or even political opinions.
Right.
It's everything, from scientific theories to your own personal values,
Mm-hmm.
even those quirky beliefs we all have. Like, I don't know, being convinced that you'll find a parking spot right in front of the store.
Exactly.
So navigating beliefs really highlights that this method is so versatile.
Yeah.
It's a toolkit to examine any belief, no matter what the content is,
Mm-hmm.
to help foster critical thinking across the board.
I like that.
So we've got this really interesting tension here, right? On one hand, navigating beliefs feels very fresh, it's inviting, and it really highlights the collaborative nature of this method
Yeah.
and how universally it can be applied.
Right.
But then on the other hand, there's this potential disruption to the street epistemology community
Mm-hmm.
and the risk that we dilute a name that despite its flaws, it has become synonymous with this really powerful approach to dialogue.
Right.
So what are your thoughts? How do you think this tension will play out?
Well, it's tough, right? It's sticking with what's familiar even when it's got some issues.
Yeah.
Or, taking a chance on something new.
Right, and that's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting. It's not just about the words. It's about how we frame these conversations about deeply held beliefs and how that can potentially have a real impact.
That's it.
And that's something worth talking about.
Absolutely.
So let's dive in.
Okay. Yeah, it really is a classic dilemma, isn't it? Like sticking with the familiar even when it's got some issues or,
Right.
Taking this leap into the unknown. But
Yeah.
that's kind of what makes this deep dive so interesting, don't you think?
It really does.
We're not just talking about word meanings here. We're actually talking about the potential impact of how we approach these conversations.
Yeah.
About beliefs people really hold dear.
And it's about so much more than just a name. It's about, could a rebrand actually help street epistemology get to more people?
Right.
Like get integrated into mainstream education.
Yeah.
Maybe even become like a normal part of how we talk to each other online.
That would be amazing.
Imagine navigating beliefs workshops popping up at community centers, workplaces, online platforms. Like, what if this was just a common way we talk to each other about tough issues?
I love that.
A framework for understanding each other.
Exactly.
No matter how different we are.
I think that would be incredibly powerful.
That's a really powerful vision.
It is.
But I do wonder, is there a risk that by trying to make street epistemology more, palatable, more mainstream, are we watering it down?
I see your point.
It is about challenging beliefs.
Yeah.
And that can be uncomfortable.
It can.
Could rebranding make it too clean, too safe, and then less effective?
Yeah, there is a fine line, between making something more accessible and stripping away what makes it work.
Exactly.
So the challenge for street epistemology, regardless of the name, is to keep that
edge.
Yeah, that critical edge, but also making it a safe space for people to really explore these things.
Okay, so how do we find that balance?
That's the question.
How do we make street epistemology or even navigating beliefs more approachable without kind of sacrificing the intellectual rigor?
Well, it comes down to how you actually do it.
Okay.
The name is just the start.
Yeah.
The real work is training people who can embody those core principles. Curiosity, neutrality, respect.
Right.
It's about creating these spaces where people feel safe to ask questions about their own beliefs and, engage with different viewpoints without feeling like they're being attacked or judged.
Okay, so the name itself isn't like the magic solution.
It's not a silver bullet.
But it's a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Like if navigating beliefs helps create a more welcoming, a more kind of open environment where people are more willing to get into that space of inquiry, then maybe, just maybe, it could really change how we communicate across the board.
It could start a ripple effect?
Think about what that could mean for education.
Oh, wow.
What if navigating beliefs was just part of what kids learned in school?
I mean, can you imagine?
Teaching students how to think critically, how to spot biases, how to have these really productive dialogues.
Like, we're talking about a generation that's equipped to handle this complex world of information, misinformation, strong opinions everywhere.
That's powerful stuff.
Yeah, it really is.
And it goes way beyond the classroom.
Totally.
Imagine workplaces where people are actually using this to, solve conflicts, make decisions together, and just really create an environment where everybody understands each other.
That would change everything.
It'd be like giving everybody a superpower, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
The power to disagree without being disagreeable.
Yeah.
The power to challenge someone's idea without attacking them.
Exactly.
Think about how online conversations could change.
Ooh, yeah.
What if instead of, just going at it,
we
actually use these tools to have more productive and more nuanced conversations online?
Wouldn't that be amazing?
It's exciting to think about, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
A world where online debates are more about really trying to see things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Less about winning.
I love that.
But let's be real, like changing how people talk to each other online.
Yeah.
That is a huge, huge task.
It's a big one.
Is that even possible, do you think?
Well, it might seem like just a fantasy.
Right.
But I think street epistemology, whatever we end up calling it, gives us some hope.
Okay.
It's about switching the focus from winning to understanding. And that shift, even if it's small, could really start to make a difference.
So maybe it's not about changing everything overnight.
Right.
Maybe it's about just planting the seeds.
Exactly.
Giving people the tools to have different kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
To show others a new way to do things online.
Like modeling a new way of interacting.
Exactly. And as more people start doing this, those little changes, they can spread, right? And we might start to see more civility, more thoughtful discussions, even online.
I think so.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
There's still some pretty big challenges here.
There are.
And one thing that comes up in the articles we read is misuse.
Uh-oh.
Like, what is street epistemology, navigating beliefs, whatever, falls into the wrong hands.
That's a good point.
What if people use it to manipulate or to force others to do things instead of actually trying to understand them?
That's a very real concern.
Yeah, and that's a crucial point.
It is.
Any tool, even something with the best intentions, can be used for bad things.
Right. So it's really important to be aware of these potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
And to really stress doing things the right way.
Absolutely.
Training programs have to make it crystal clear that you have to be neutral.
Right.
You have to respect people's choices.
Exactly.
And avoid manipulating them at all costs.
So we're not just teaching the techniques.
Yeah.
We're teaching ethics, too. We're teaching a code of conduct for these conversations.
Yeah, and we need ongoing dialogue within the community.
Okay.
As street epistemology evolves, new ways to use it pop up, we have to keep asking, what's the impact? And are there any ethical issues we need to think about?
It's a good reminder that any method, any way of having these dialogues is only as good as the people who are using it.
Right.
The human element, I mean, that's always going to be the most important factor.
It always is.
It really strikes me that whether we're talking about street epistemology or navigating beliefs, the main goal is really the same, right? It's about creating this space where real dialogue can actually happen.
That's it.
But how do we get from, like, the idea of it to actually doing it?
Right.
How do we go from these abstract concepts to conversations that really make a difference in the real world?
That's the question, isn't it? I mean, it's easy to talk about being curious and respectful, but it's a whole other thing to actually do it when you're in the middle of a disagreement.
Especially about something you really care about.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's like we all have this little voice in our heads that just wants to jump in.
Oh, yes.
Defend our side.
Yeah.
Prove the other person wrong.
Other them wrong, yeah.
So how do we quiet that voice and actually tap into that genuine curiosity?
Right.
That willingness to really understand someone else's perspective, even when we totally disagree with their conclusion.
It's a skill. It's something you have to practice, and it takes work. But one thing that I think helps is to shift your mindset.
Okay.
Instead of thinking of a conversation as a battle, you have to win.
Right.
What if you thought of it as an opportunity to explore something together?
Interesting.
A chance to learn something new, to get a deeper understanding of a different point of view.
Yeah.
Even if you don't end up changing your own mind.
So it's about the process, not just the outcome.
Exactly. And that's maybe where navigating beliefs really works as a metaphor. It's like a journey. You're willing to wander through the world of someone else's beliefs without judging, just following their thinking and seeing where it goes.
That's a really great point.
And maybe along the way, you find some common ground, shared values, or at least a better understanding of why the issue is so complicated.
And who knows, maybe in that process of really trying to understand, we even open ourselves up to the possibility of changing our own minds.
Now, wouldn't that be something?
It would.
But even if our core beliefs stay the same, just having those kinds of conversations can be really powerful.
Absolutely.
It can make relationships stronger, build bridges between people, and create a more understanding, more empathetic society.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive,
I
want to leave you with a little challenge.
Okay, I like it.
The next time you're talking to someone and you feel like you're about to push back, argue, make your point. Just take a breath.
Good advice.
And ask yourself, what would it look like to actually try to navigate this person's beliefs?
That's a great question.
What questions could I ask to really understand where they're coming from? How can I turn this into us exploring together? Instead of just fighting over our opinions.
It might feel weird at first. You might stumble a bit, make mistakes.
Right.
But the more you do it, the better you'll get at it.
Right.
And you might find that those tough conversations actually become the most rewarding ones.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the future of street epistemology and the power of navigating beliefs.
It's been fun.
Until next time, stay curious,
Yeah.
Stay open
Keep those conversations going.
and keep those conversations flowing.